What you want to know?
What's going on, people? Myke here with an episode of What Do You Want to Know? We will ask your question. If I like your question, I'll answer your question on camera. Yes, it has been a while since I've done one of these videos, or since I've done a video in general. Got a lot of shit going on, life shit. I'll explain it in a future video. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into it. This question comes from one of my Patreon supporters named Jake. And Jake asked, what do you think of Danzig's recent comments on how punk wouldn't exist today due to cancel culture? So before we get into this, let's look at exactly what it is that Glenn Danzig said. It's not super long, so I'll just read it. But this is an excerpt from an interview that he did with Rolling Stone. Because, yeah, let's point out that a whole bunch of people are mad about what a 65-year-old man said about punk rock in Rolling Stone. Because, Rolling Stone is clearly what punks go to for their news and ideals. But yeah, let's get into it here. He said, people don't understand because everything's so cancel culture, woke bullshit nowadays, but you could never have the punk explosion nowadays because of cancel culture and woke bullshit. You could never have it. It would never have happened. We're lucky it happened when it did because it'll never happen again. You won't have any of those kinds of bands ever again. Everyone's so uptight and PC, it's just like, okay, whatever. So I saw quite a few people reacting to this on Twitter and Facebook, and I had quite a few people ask me for my thoughts on it as well. And honestly, before this question was sent in, I didn't really think much about it at all. Why? Because I don't think anything he said was all that crazy or surprising. So I love the Misfits, at least Danzig era Misfits. I didn't really listen to much of the other stuff, but I also love some of Danzig's music, especially the first 3 albums. Glenn Danzig is a punk and a metal icon, undisputedly. Have I ever looked up to him? No, not at all. That's not to say anything necessarily negative about him. It's just to say that he's never been someone from the punk scene whose opinion I was necessarily interested in hearing. I did a video a while ago called Were Punks Always Right? And in that, I mentioned that I got into this phase where I mostly listened to bands who were really saying something with their lyrics. And that seemed to piss a lot of people off because they misconstrued it as me saying that all bands with kind of silly lyrics just sucked. And that's not what I said or what I believe. I'm just saying that I was more interested in bands that were singing about things I cared about, like anti-war and anti-racism, anti-bigotry in general, animal liberation, human liberation, etc. So when I think of a band like the Misfits who had lyrics like, I ain't no goddamn son of a bitch, you better think about it, baby, or, I got something to say, I killed your baby today. Yeah, these kind of lyrics didn't make me think about a band that was trying to change the social or political landscape. And that's totally fine, because as ridiculous and senseless as those lyrics are, back in the day, they were just fun and stupid lyrics, And sure, most people might be bothered by those kind of lyrics today. That's a fair assessment. But here's why I think the whole conversation is stupid and why I think his comments are really not that big of a deal. So he said that the punk explosion couldn't happen today due to woke bullshit and cancel culture. Okay, let's start off with the woke bullshit. First off, I am starting to absolutely hate the term woke. I never refer to myself in that manner unless I'm completely joking, and that's mainly because the term has been bastardized so much that the original meaning doesn't matter anymore. Kind of like punk. And it's also because anyone who would refer to themselves as woke in a serious manner would hate me for a litany of reasons, because I'm not woke enough. But woke typically just means that you're very aware of racial injustice. But I guess people now use it to encompass an awareness of all levels of injustice. So then you have cancel culture. This is where I think Glenn's statement starts to kind of fall apart. So I'm not going to get into whether or not I believe cancel culture is even a real thing. It doesn't really matter. But for the sake of this video, let's say that it does exist. So what is it? It's where people kind of get together and essentially ruin the career of someone or a group of someone's based on something they did or didn't do, which may or may not conflict with their social or political affiliation. So let's put things into perspective here, right? We're talking about punk rock, a subculture that was essentially as counterculture as you can get for its time, a subculture that was basically built off operating outside of the boundaries of popular and mainstream society and social norms. So explain to me why the fuck a punk band would care if mainstream society was trying to ruin their career. Like, I don't get it. Like, since when was punk concerned with getting big name sponsors or endorsement deals? So I don't know, maybe the latter era of punk was concerned with that, but surely not the era that Glenn came from. So why would punk care about cancel culture? But if we're looking at this objectively, can we really say that Glenn's wrong in the sense of today's punk bands maybe not being able to get away with some of the shit that they said back in the day? I don't think he's wrong there. I feel like if a band came out today singing about killing babies and raping mommies, I definitely think there's a larger faction of the punk scene that would stand up against that than maybe existed back in the 70s and early 80s. Like, I saw that the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, who are not exactly a punk band, but they still operate within the same realm, and we all know that Dickie has a very deep history in punk and hardcore, but they released a song about George Floyd that was, in their eyes, a supportive song about change, but people thought the tone was off, no pun intended, and it got railed across the board. Then you have NoFX, who released a song where people thought Fat Mike's comments on queer issues were kind of off, regardless of how he identifies within the queer community. So there's a lot of ruckus about those lyrics. Those are just two small examples to say that, hey, I get his point. But again, my point is, if punk was always built off the idea of being counterculture, why would you be upset about popular culture being counter you? So I'm lost on his point here. But then again, it's Glenn Danzig. And again, nothing against him, but I've never read anything he said and been like, holy shit, that's profound. For instance, I remember him saying in an interview a few years back that punk rock was anti-PC. I've always thought the term PC was fucking stupid. It never embodied anything that I believed. And, if you really think that the American government truly wants all of us to get along, you're fucking nuts. If you really think American politicians on the left or the right are actually out here trying to ensure that all social groups and classes are properly taken care of, you're simply not paying attention. If you can't say that this whole system is built on money and power and the power of money and the money of the powerful, then I don't really know what to tell you. These groups that you've convinced yourselves that actually have your best interests in mind, they'd kill you in a heartbeat if it was truly profitable. Really, this is why I see a far bigger issue when punk icons go conservative. When they start rallying against the best interests of people in favor of corporations and government and money. Then I think they're falling in line with what the status quo is shooting for. And that seems way less punk to me than becoming an SJW. But regardless, punk rock means different things to different people. It really depends on what area of punk rock you grew up in and what segments you cared about. For me, I was definitely more interested in the part of it that thought we were going to change the world for the better. We were focused on creating a society where everyone had everything that they needed. Everyone felt a true sense of liberation and freedom. So this whole idea of punk being anti-PC was stupid to me, and it still is. Not trying to get too deep into it, but if you actually understand how language works, and you understand how language that is centered around race and sex and gender, etc., can lead to attitudes of bigotry, which can lead to acts of oppression, then how can you make a statement like punk is anti-PC when there was a whole segment of the punk rock scene that was trying to change the way that disenfranchised and marginalized groups were being treated? So you're going to tell me that bands like Disrupt and Destroy and Crass and Propagandhi and the Dead Kennedys and Bad Religion and Anti-Flag and Reagan Youth, those weren't punk bands? It reminds me of when punk kids call other people social justice warriors. I find that shit to be fucking hilarious. Like some asshole in a Minor Threat shirt calling someone a social justice warrior. Like, you dipshit, do you understand that you're representing with your shirt a lot of people's first taste of what it means to fight and care about social justice? Like, it doesn't make any sense. To me, a punk kid calling someone an SJW is like some dude in tight-ass Wranglers, boots, and a David Allen Coe t-shirt calling someone a fucking redneck. So again, I'm just kind of whatever on this whole thing. Glenn Danzig said a thing, and I don't necessarily care about his opinion on this, and I don't really see why it's such an enormous deal. Maybe it's because he referred to it as woke bullshit, so maybe that gives the impression that he thinks that being woke or aware of social injustices is stupid. Or maybe people are upset because they think his comments will give credence to the whole idea of people not being held responsible for their words and actions. I'm not entirely sure, but statements about how punk bands couldn't be as popular today as they were back in the day, coming from a guy whose band sold out multiple reunion shows and is headlining more festivals next year, it just kind of goes over my head, to be honest. Because fuck, man, like Little Nas X throwing that thing on Satan, that shit wouldn't have gone well in the 80s. And porno grind is a thing. There are noise bands who legit sing about pedophilia. Hey, Glenn, go ask one of your friends about NSBM, you know? I think if we're looking at this logically, it's more so that the punk explosion would happen today if it hadn't already happened. You know, people have simply just found more extreme ways of being antagonistic than singing about killing babies, you know? All of this just sounds like an old man screaming into the void about things that he doesn't really understand while simultaneously pretending that his era of music is so much more important than others. Take it from a guy who has done all of those things. All I know is this isn't Chris from Propagandhi or Brian from Catharsis or Jello Biafra suddenly becoming a right-wing turd, so I'm kind of shrugging for the most part. So do what you will with all of this, I guess, but I'm not ready to raise the pitchforks and say that Glenn Danzig is a racist or anything like that. So I don't know. But I guess that's it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you leave some comments down there and let me know what you think of this whole thing, because clearly I'm kind of confused. But yeah, as usual, thank you for living, thank you for loving, thank you for being you, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, peace out, boy.